Muted.
Yeah, I think Ellie might be referring to some degree to me. I tend to tails out of school, and I've always gotten away with it because we haven't been recording, but I guess I'm going to have to clean it up. All right. Welcome to the July 9. I'm looking at the July 7 agenda. It's still coming back to haunt us. The July 9 session of the Maple Broadband Governing Board meeting. Welcome to all. Let's just get started. I'll entertain I heard in a recent meeting that since I'm also a delegate, I'm going to make a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
But can I ask maybe an amendment to it, please? Sure. Because we're really short on people and quorum is a must. And I'm only going to be here for like the next half an hour. Can we move anything that requires a vote, like the bylaws changes, to the front end?
That's a brilliant idea. That's great. So let's do just that. My motion I'll amend per Shannon's suggestion that we move the bylaws changes, which I think are the only critical one. Ellie, is there anything else that is subject to a vote that's of consequence? I don't think there is, right?
Just approving the minutes, but that's not important, but we can do that quickly.
Okay, so let's just move the bylaws changes to right after we approve the agenda, and then we'll pick up from there. So thanks a lot. That was a great suggestion. So my motion is to approve the agenda with the exception of moving the bylaws changes to item 3 right after the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we got a second. All right, thank you. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. I hope you're ready for this, Ellie. So we probably ought to bring up on the, how do we want to do this? Do we want to bring up on the screen the modifications we have in mind to our bylaws so that everyone gets a final chance to take a look at it?
Yep, that's what I'm doing right now. Just was scrambling a little bit. Can you guys see the screen? There we go.
Yep. Yeah, just make it bigger, please.
Okay. All right. So just to remind everyone, so these were passed last month. So as per the bylaws, we need to approve changes to the bylaws in 2 meetings in order to have them be adopted. So it was voted on last month. So this is the second vote. And if we make any changes, then we have to start over. So hopefully we don't make any changes. But we did review these last month. So so this is the red line. So there were really 2 major changes. Well, there were really 2 major changes and 1 minor change. So the major change was to create a nominating committee, and this describes how the nominating committee works to nominate the officers and executive committee. And I'll just run through them quickly, and then we can go back to anyone who has any questions on the wording. The second, this is the minor change, is to add the executive director as an ex officio member of the executive committee, because somehow that wasn't ever done. But that's more of a technical correction. And then this here is a clarifying change talking about succession. And then the final change was to modify some dates because there's a correction, or sorry, say correction, but there was a modification made to the CUD statute in this year's legislature to enable flexibility around the exact dates on which certain statutory requirements have to happen. And so the old statute said that certain things had to happen on October 21st, November 15th, and December 15th. And so those relates to the budget and the annual reports, drafts, and finals, and public hearing in relation to that. So these are modifications that move these requirements under our bylaws to the end of those months, just to give us flexibility in case of need, whereby if we're not doing these things at our normal governing board meeting, which is before the 15th, we're not going to be out of bounds of our bylaws. So those are the changes. So does anyone want to look at any of this wording in detail, or because I think practically everyone here was here last month and voted on this? So if anyone wants to go over anything in detail, let me know which one and we can go over the wording. Otherwise, we can turn it over to Steve to entertain a vote to adopt these bylaws changes.
The normal procedure would be we'll have a vote, we'll have a second, we'll open the floor to comment, and then if there's no comments, we can move to a vote so that we can make good use of Shannon's time. So I'll make a motion that we adopt these changes to our bylaws as depicted on the screen and as previously distributed to the governing board. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Thank you. Discussion, questions? Okay, great. Excellent. All right. So all in favor of affecting those changes to the bylaws, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. Thank you, everyone. They're very fairly minor, but it's good that we're keeping these up. I think at the time we were kicking around the idea of maybe going through this once a year around the time of our annual meeting, but maybe we won't need to do it that often. Hopefully it's pretty static right now. All right. I'm going to make a motion to approve the June 11 minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Issues? All in favor of approving the minutes from the June 11 meeting, raise your hand or say aye. Excellent. Opposed? Any abstentions? Nancy was not present, so Nancy is abstaining. Anyone else abstaining? Looks like not. Okay. Public comments. Ellie, do we have any non-public, non-executive, or non-governing board members on this call?
Well, we have Darren from ACRPC
Yeah.
subbing for Adam, but anyone can make a public comment.
We also have
Roger
Roger.
Nishi.
We also have Roger. Yes.
Good point. And I guess I should just announce his presence since we'll be hearing from Roger in a moment. Roger is the Vice President of Industry Relations at Wakefield and Champlain Valley Telecom. He's our operating partner. And in a minute or two, we're going to be delivering a report on the progress that our two organizations together have made towards building broadband in Addison County. So any public comments? Okay. Move right on. Chair report. I'm going to make it fast, hopefully. You may notice that I'm actually got a good connection today. It's because Maple Broadband delivered broadband service to me less than a week ago. So it's a beautiful thing. It's really wonderful. All right. So slideshow. This is actually pretty fast. So as of July 3, we meet weekly with the operations team at WCVT, and as of our last meeting on last Thursday, we have 337 subscribers. It's pretty gradual. I'd say 10 to 15 subscribers a week is kind of the general average we've been running at, so that's not bad at all. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about cable route diversity since it's kind of relevant to what we're going to be doing in the future. This is an awful busy slide, but I'll give you a quick walkthrough. These orange stars you see represent where we have electronics, where we have one of our hubs. We have a hub in Virgins, Shoreham, Orwell, and Leicester. And our operator, WCBT, also has, they call them central offices, but for purposes of our discussion, these are hubs too. And they have a hub in Addison, Bridport, Weybridge, and Charlotte. And so our goal initially had been to connect our infrastructure to WCBT's. So when we first built our infrastructure, and actually I made a mistake here because we should have a hub in Cornwall, and the hub in Cornwall initially connected only to Weybridge, and then shortly after we built out Shoreham, and then we also extended service from the Cornwall hub over to Bridport. And then we subsequently built out Shoreham and Orwell. And as you can see, what we were doing is we want to create diverse connections, which is basically a way of saying that if for some reason service is disconnected to the Bridport central office, we can still access service through the Weybridge central office. So that means our subscribers have continuity of service even if there's a cable cut. So it's generally the way we want to do things long term, and it really drives towards resiliency of our infrastructure, which is really key. We're not going to be a successful operation if we suffer service outages. So this is kind of the approach we've taken. As we've discussed in previous meetings, we are in the last stages of finalizing a presence in Leicester, and when we do that, we're going to be extending service from Leicester through Orwell to Bridport, and we're also going to be extending service through a new piece of construction up through Salisbury and up to Cornwall. So that's, we expect will happen, I would say, later this summer, if we don't push it too hard. And then that's what that world looks like today. And so we just show those two colors so you can see that if a service outage in our upper area is disrupted by the cable up here that goes to Panton or to Addison, we still have good service because it's connected to Charlotte. So this is what we're going to end up looking like after we finish the work that we're doing with Leicester. Basically, we're opening up that cable route diversity so that all the connections that run through the entirety of our service area, including the invisible hub here in Cornwall, will all be routing diversely to the Bridport and Weybridge central offices managed by WCBT, and there will be miles separating those two infrastructures. So that's what's often referred to as a ring, and basically it just is. It's a huge stride in increased diversity and infrastructure resilience, which is really what we're trying to accomplish. So that's kind of the high level view of it. Any questions on that? We want to kind of move briskly here because we want to leverage Shannon as long as we can. Yes, Ben.
No, I'll be quick. I'll be quick. So what wasn't shown on that diagram was, I assume that between Bridport and Weybridge there is a connection, and that's the ring. That's like the final piece of the ring.
Yeah, the ring is. We try to be discreet about this because this is there's an IT risk issues associated with this, but the network that's maintained by WCBT is not just what you're describing, Ben. It is an interconnection between those two central offices, but it's far more sophisticated. There's a lot of resilience across all of WCBT's service area, including that. So yes, you're correct, but it's only part of the story. Any other questions?
As Middlebury is going through Cornwall on those things on South Street?
That's a good question. We don't. What you missed or what you didn't see on those documents was anything in Middlebury or Ripton, and that is because we haven't done our design yet. Our design associated with Middlebury and Ripton is pending a lot of steps that need to be taken regarding the BEAD program and where we need to be able to serve. At which point, once we know where we need to be able to serve as directed by the BEAD program, then we'll engage some engineering to create a design, and how the cables route and whatnot. Those all are TBD. We have to put one foot in front of the other on this. So that's something that remains to be seen.
Just one quick point there. There is a tiny bit of that little interconnection back to complete the ring that you mentioned, Steve, that goes through a corner of Southwest Middlebury on Route 7 and a little bit of 3 Mile Bridge Road.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. It is time for the biannual network build status report. Ellie, I hope you have those documents to share. Great.
I do.
So yeah, if you could make it a wee bit bigger, please. So those of you who've been with us for a while, you will have seen this before. This is basically kind of a comparative. All of the items at the top of that table are kind of standing information, talking a little bit about our two operations, and you can get a sense of it when you look at first year of operation. We've only been around for a few years, whereas WCBT has been around for over 100 years. So if we move down beyond the top detail, you can see how we've been growing our infrastructure as compared with what WCBT has been doing in Maple Broadband towns. And I think what's really telling is one of the items that was a great deal of concern when we first got started was, what if Maple Broadband builds out a lot in our territory and WCBT doesn't track our progress? So I think this is demonstrates that, if anything, they're going a lot faster than we are. They have different mandate in a sense than we do, but ultimately we have a shared mandate of ensuring that every unserved and underserved address in our member towns have access to fiber broadband. And I think to that end, I think this is very meaningful. Before we move to the second page, any questions on this? Okay, second page, Ellie, please. Okay, this is a new one, folks. We can't see the header there, Ellie.
I have to make it smaller again, Steve.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. All right, and we can zoom in a minute. I kind of wanted to point out that this is basically says our planned substantial completion by town. So in construction terms, substantial completion doesn't mean every subscriber in Addison County has service. It means that our mandate, as defined by Act 71, will be complete when we're substantially complete. And that mandate says every unserved and underserved address in our district, in our 20 towns, has access to broadband service. It doesn't have to be Maple Broadband. It doesn't have to be WCBT. It can be Consolidated, Fidium. It can be anybody else. We just want to make sure, as dictated by the state, that every address that has poor service has good service by the time we're done with our obligation. So this then, if you can kind of take a look at it real quick, you can kind of get a sense that we have pretty short-term objectives to complete our construction. It looks like for WCBT, they look like 2000. It looks like Lincoln is last in the list, along, and Moncton's a little bit further sooner. And then we also have our projections, as you can see in there. Perhaps if you would maybe zoom a bit to get everybody a chance to see the rest of it. The only other comment that I kind of shared with Ellie was this Weybridge is kind of confusing. Maple Broadband's, we have a sliver of territory that is Maple Broadband territory, and that sliver was built out by Consolidated or Fidium, same organization, when they built out Ripton and Middlebury. So this is one of the three towns that Consolidated Fidium has already built out. Perhaps they're still building it out. I don't know. But so our obligation ends in Weybridge because our portion of that territory, every address in our territory has access to broadband fiber through Fidium. So that's, again, part of that substantial completion. That's where we don't have to build it out because somebody else did. And right now, our overarching goal is to ensure that every address has that fiber broadband service. That's a mouthful. So before I open the floor to questions, Roger, do you care to make any comments on whatever I said before or anything else on this slide?
You're muted.
That might have been a good thing. I'll keep it short. What Steve said about the redundancy in the network is key to making sure that customers stay up and running. And throughout our network, we have a lot of diverse rings that, as Steve said, we won't discuss because that's something we really keep close to our vest because that's how we keep our networks up and running. Regarding everything that Steve's discussed in terms of our ads this year, we're at about 600 in terms of homes passed so far this year in our area, but that's because we haven't closed some work orders, and we have some very big work orders out there. And until we close the work orders, I don't count the homes as being passed. So there are several more that are going to come up before, by year end as we do complete the jobs and close out the accounting onto work orders. I think this year we plan on actually adding probably another 1,200 beyond where we are right now in terms of getting to the areas in Bristol and some of the other towns that we're showing is coming about in 2024.
Yep. Whereas from our side, we will have some additional addresses that serving areas that we're adding, but we're not going to see as big a jump as most of our builds are planned for next year.
Nancy, I see your hand up, and I know Justin had his hand up as well.
Zapata had her hand up first.
Oh, Zapata.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering if that was the reason why Ripton is not on this list, is due to the consolidated Fidium type
Oh my
of
gosh.
relationship?
No, it's not on the list because I completely forgot it, which is extremely embarrassing.
Oh, you must have done it on July 5th then. No worries.
I think I actually did it on July 1st or something like that. So I'll take a mulligan for that one. I apologize. But Ripton is 100% Maple Broadband, and the answer to that should be 2025 because the remaining addresses we plan to serve as part of BEAD. So I'll go ahead and add that right now.
So yeah, Zapata, this looks a lot like what we were just describing before. Our obligation to serve Ripton stands, but we're answerable. We will be answerable to BEAD, which will tell us which addresses are qualify under the program, and we can be compensated for. So yeah, absolutely. There's some intervening steps there, but absolutely, we will. We're moving up there. It's part of our plans, and again, it'll happen at the same time that I think I expect we're going to be doing our updated design that covers Middlebury and Ripton will all be completed later this year. Okay, Ben, get your hand up.
I think Nancy had her hand up first.
Nancy.
Thanks. I have a couple of questions for Roger, just because I'm trying to understand what this table really means. So, Roger, for example, in Starksboro, which is the town that I represent on the governing board, when you say, well, we've got about half of Starksboro this year, but the other half next year. Does that mean, when you say that, do you mean that all of our back roads will have fiber going by those households?
So what that means is we're not going to finish having everything go by the back roads this year, but we will in 2025. Now, of those locations that show the 2024 date, as we start going past those, we may actually start installing the drops into some of those homes, depending on where the progress is in some of the areas that show 2023 on this list. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah. So let me also kind of ask a similar question in Bristol. So does that 2024 in Bristol mean that you will have passed the households on all the back roads in Bristol? And does it mean that you'll be offering installations on those back roads?
So let me answer by starting out with all those that show 2023. We finished all the main line in those towns in 2023. So Addison, Bridport, Panton, Waltham, and Weybridge. And so this year we're concentrating on really putting drops in those areas. So with Bristol being completed with the main line in 2024, toward the end of this year we'll start, but really in 25 we'll hit it harder in terms of going home to home to home to home and putting in the drops and providing the fiber service.
I
So
see. Okay.
it's generally main line 1 year and then the drops the next.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that clarification.
Ben,
Yeah, so I represent Bristol, so I'm glad Nancy asked about Bristol. But and I live in an area. I don't live in the village, so this is very salient for me. So this table is really talking about the main line, at least for WCVT's perspective. This is the main line construction and sort of finishing up the engineering effort and doing the construction. But what I think I just heard, Roger, was so folks who have signed up for notifications from WCVT about tell me when fiber is available at my specific address, when can I sort of like start that process? That's not going to be until 2025. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
And depending on the sheer volume of all of the main line coming together within the 3 years, we more than likely will not finish the Bristol drops in 2025. It's probably going to be in the following year.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling back up here to the first sheet so that people can understand the magnitude of the problem or the challenge. Because I mean, the first thing is that we want to have an apples to apples here, because for us, we are done when the main line is done, because we add people as subscribers come over and sign up for service. And WCVT, on the other hand, they have maybe not all the subscribers, but they have many of the subscribers. And so having the main line done is step one. Step two is getting the drops in there. It would take us forever if we had to provide drops to 100% of the addresses. So this is a sense that when they started, I mean, like 3,000 homes have been passed in the last 2 years. It's going to take a while to finish that backlog. So I think, so that's why this is what it is just to make sure we have an apples to apples comparison of when the main line is done. But there is the second step, of course, of, you're not on fiber until your drop is actually done. But it just reflects a difference in our businesses, essentially, that we're a new business that's creating fiber and bringing on customers as they sign up versus having thousands of subscribers that we need to convert.
Nancy.
Sorry, one more question. I just wonder, Ellie or Steve, if you would, and maybe everyone understands this, but I'm not sure they do. Can you explain how our partnership works with WCVT in terms of how we're able to help WCVT fund the build that it is doing in its parts of Addison County?
Go ahead, Ellie.
Sure. So that's a great question, Nancy. So as you guys all know, our source of construction funds is part of the Act 71 Broadband Construction Grant Program. And so as part of that, Maple Broadband received an allocation of approximately, it was a little bit under $21 million. And way back in the day, several years ago, we essentially divided this between ourselves and WCVT to figure out proportionally what was a fair split of that Maple Broadband allocation between our respective footprints. And so for the construction funds, $9 million, so we supported WCVT in their application, I think it was 2022, the same as us, to the Vermont Community Broadband Board for a $9 million construction grant, which enabled them to build out these 2023 towns here, Addison, Bridport, Panton, Weybridge, and Waltham. And then we also, late last year, we also, at their request, gave them a $700,000 sub-grant as part of our pre-construction grant. And then, so that's historical. And then going forward, the next round of federal funding that we've all been talking about for many moons now, or not as many moons for you newer folks on the board. But for the rest of us, we've been talking about the BEAD program for as long as I can remember. But that application is finally going to be opening up this fall. Maybe, hopefully. And we're planning to bid on this jointly with WCVT. So that's going to help fund some of the remaining areas in our footprint as well as their footprint.
And when we make that application, it will be made by Ellie and me and the folks at Maple Broadband, and then we will grant funds. We will sub-grant. I don't know what the term is, but basically the funds that WCVT needs to build out in their territory will be managed by our organization.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see exactly how the program rules are set out because we haven't seen it all yet, but conceptually that's the idea, is that we will respect the same split in terms of who operates the network in these different portions.
Great, thank you.
Darren, wait, Rickson.
It's me, Steve. On the 4th of July, I had some people from Ferrisburg who were saying, when are we going to get it? And will we be visited by Maple Broadband, or are they, is WCBT going to do it? And I said, go to our website and fill in your address. Is that still the working method that we should do whenever anybody asks?
It sounds like it's two items there, but in general, your best bet to understand the process is to first of all register your interest. But I think that the short answer to your question, who's going to go out and connect you? Our operator is Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom, and we have contracted with them to perform the drops. So the connection from the main line, the cable that's up in the pole, they extend the service from the pole to the building. That's the responsibility of WCBT in all cases, and that actually is whether or not it's in Ferrisburg. Actually, part of Ferrisburg is served by WCBT as well. So the rule stands across all of our 20 towns. All drops are being installed by WCBT or their subcontractors.
The question was, when is it going to come down my road? Because it hasn't come down their road yet.
Wow, we're done in Ferrisburg. It should be down your road.
No, we're not. No, there's some big chunks that, I mean, one of the serving areas for Gens 8 is mostly Ferrisburg, and that's being done as part of BEAD. There are some other areas that are at Ferrisburg that are waiting for BEAD as well. So it depends on where they are. So I think that is right. And if there's ever a question about something, then you guys know how to reach me. Because if it's a friend of a governing board member, we can certainly make sure that if anything is unclear, I can answer it.
And this is where it does get confusing, because we both have Ferrisburg addresses, and if a customer or if someone inquires and if they don't see their address in on the Maple Broadband Crowd Fiber website, then they need to go to the Waitsfield Crowd Fiber website and put it in and see where their address shows up. So it does get confusing in this instance, and we've thought about trying to find ways to explain this, and the best way really to explain it is, can you put your address in both and see where it pops up?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of Ferrisburg is our territory, but like up here, this Northwest, that's part of BEAD. A lot of this over here was considered to be, and remember again as well, there's a lot of areas that are considered to be served and are not eligible for the grant funding. So we're going to have to build those as and when private funding allows. So a lot of this area west of Route 7 was ineligible. A lot of this area up here is ineligible. Some of this is part of BEAD. This down here is BEAD. I think this is still Ferrisburg over here in the east as well before it turns into New Haven. So there's some pretty significant chunks of it that are not completed.
And ours are small parts that just come across from the other neighboring towns. And that's where, like I said, it does get difficult to really identify where they are.
Yep. Oh yeah, and this part here.
Great redundancy. Thank you.
Yep.
Rich, you're next.
I'd like to follow up with what Roger said about 1 year it's lay out the main line, the following year it's install the drops. So being the alternate from Starksboro, so 2024 you're going to be put the main line in for 50%. Then in 2025 you're going to do the drops for that 50%, and you're also going to do the main line for the other 50%. Then in 2026 you're going to do the drops for that last 50%.
So that's
right.
That's partially true. Once we get out in the later years, when we have mainline everywhere, we'll probably split up different sections and make sure that we're spreading around the drop work. So all the drop work won't be done. I would say in 2026, it may take another year with the sheer volume of mainline that we put in the Addison County area.
But also,
Okay.
Roger, I mean, maybe a follow-up question, just, I mean, if you finish mainline in a year, like say you finish mainline in 2024, it doesn't mean that you wait until the next calendar year starts before you start doing drops. You'll start doing drops continuously over the areas where there's mainline, but I'm sure there's many factors that are affecting which drops you do where. So that's maybe like more a way of describing how long it will take for most people to get service is about a year after the main line is done. But some people will get service, may get service much sooner. And some people may be delayed even further, particularly if, I mean, I shouldn't say particularly if, but there's factors, some of which may be rurality or length of drop or whatever that might push those towards the end of the list because the harder ones probably go at the end. You convert the easier ones first, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that and what you said is very true. Those that have conduits and we need to bury, we have buried crews that can only work in the summer, so that will push things out farther. At the same time, if we're building an area and there's cable TV or that other company is already serving the location, we're probably not going to put drops in there right away because those are considered served and we're just passing through there. So we'll get to the underserved and unserved first.
And also people need to agree to have it too. Some people are very happy with their copper and they may not wish to get fiber service urgently or at all. So that's another factor too.
To add to that though, at some point we do really request that everyone gets off of the copper so we're not maintaining two networks, and at times that's a challenge, and we may even enlist Ellie and Steve at some point to help encourage those to move to fiber, because it does no one any good to have us have to maintain two sets of plant, especially when storms come about.
Yep. The copter has been installed in some cases 100 years ago. It's degrading. So I think that's one of the big drivers for WCVT to put out fiber, is because the amount of energy they've had to expend to maintain the copper infrastructure in recent years is far greater than what it was 50 years ago or something like that. So it's just an economic decision to try to migrate everyone to the fiber. Any other questions? Great. Thank you so much, Roger, for joining us. It's been very, very helpful, very educational. And the good news is that anyone who may have missed this meeting, once we get the approval of the minutes for this meeting, we will have a recording of this meeting posted on our website. So having said that, we're going to move on. Roger, you are welcome to hang around if you want, or if you've got other business to attend to, feel free to move on.
I'll hang on for a little bit, but if I'd like to thank you everyone for all your support and serving on the board, and I'm glad you welcomed me here today, and I look forward to future updates and getting fiber to more of the customers in the Maple Broadband area.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, moving on to operations, service availability. Ellie, can you take this on, please?
Sure. So June was a big month for our service activations. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had 7 serving areas, or I should say portions thereof, because some of them are relatively small due to the BEAD exclusions that all went live in the month of June. So when we get to the operations dashboards, you could see, but we had an increase of 336 passings month over month. So that was exciting. So we had Virgins 11, 13, and 15, 7 for Virgins 10 North, which is where Steve lives, and Orwell 4 all launched in the month of June. So that's what we have in terms of service availability. We have one more serving area, which is Orwell 3, which is busy being spliced right now. And so that will be up shortly. And then, as Steve mentioned earlier, the last thing we're doing is completing this little bit of network resilience. And then we're regrouping and figuring out what's next in relation to the BEAD program and otherwise.
Yep. And in terms of construction, perhaps you got pretty much what you needed on that. I think from the perspective of our plans, we had broken up our project when we first got started into about 3 phases. We did make quite a few changes in what portion of our territory was covered in which phase. Regardless, we are just wrapping up phase 3 right now, and phase 3 will be the conclusion of what we will have done. And I think, Ellie, at this point, you believe that that resilient chunk will be paid for from ARPA funds, from Act 71. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Yep. So in a sense, it's probably not as elegant as that, but at a high level, we will have exhausted all of our ARPA funds that we were given for construction, and we will have accomplished everything we set out to do with that. And from my perspective, it's a huge amount of our territory. Granted, it actually looks better on paper because it looks like we covered all of that northern territory, for example, that surrounds Virgins, but there's a lot of addresses yet to be served because of the constraints applied upon our work related to Act 71. So we got plenty more work to do, but we've been, it seems to me that we've been on track with all of our goals and met our goals to date. So I think that's commendable. I'm very pleased overall. Do you have anything to add about construction, Ellie?
Nope.
Okay. How about marketing, public relations, Ellie?
Okay, so as we covered last month, we are busy searching for a new marketing firm. So our current marketing firm, their contract, or we gave them 2 months notice, and so we're in our last month with them. So through that runs through the end of July. So we, I can't remember how many weeks ago it was now, sometime in May, I think we issued an RFP for a new marketing firm. We had 4 on-time responses, 1 late response, and of those responses, there were 2 clear winners, if you will, for the shortlist. There were three very good responses, but the third very good response was significantly higher in price than the other 2 good responses, and it wasn't even necessarily a better response. There were 3 very good responses. So Steve, Nancy, and I interviewed the 2 on the shortlist today, and we plan to have a discussion with the executive committee and hopefully make a decision this week. So I'm really excited about that. I honestly think that either choice would be a good, solid choice for us and will help us better meet our needs and also be reduced ongoing cost. So that's a win-win. And so our current marketing firm, we're just trying to wrap up with them. So, I mean, keep the trains running and wrap up the projects, which are ongoing projects. I think most of which are done, getting the customer welcome kit out there. And we ordered a second pull-up banner that actually says what we do to be used for field days this year, and getting ready for that event, that big event in early August.
That's a good thing to raise, Ellie. We have, since our executive director, Ellie DeVilliers, started, we've always had a presence at Addison County Field Days. Are we still sharing the booth with WCVT, Ellie? We are. So,
I discussed it with Kurt earlier today.
Excellent. So we're not, as you may be aware, we do not have a governing board meeting in August. So this will be your notice that we will be there at Addison County Field Days. We'll maintain a presence there. We'll have people staffing our booth, and you are all welcome to come and visit and make contact with some of the folks at Maple Broadband that you may have only seen on this screen. Any questions of Ellie about marketing and public relations?
I think just to that point, Steve, I don't want to set the expectation that I'm going to be there all day, every day during field days. We're going to need to speak with the executive committee about people volunteering to run that booth at certain times. And if there's longer standing governing board members who feel like you might be comfortable fielding some questions or talking to customers, then please let me know, because that would be great. Because, you know, I'll attend some hours, but the more bodies we have, the more bodies we can have a Maple Broadband body. And the hours that we don't, the team from Waitsfield is very, very capable and willing of answering questions, but sometimes they are a bit flummoxed if it's something which only we would really know.
Great. Excellent. Good point there, Ellie. Thank you. Is there anything else, Ellie, do you know of that we want to tack on other there under 8?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on. Time for the dashboard. Normally, we would ask our treasurer, Cy Tall, to deliver this, but Cy is away on vacation. So, Ellie, if you wouldn't mind going through the dashboard and audit treasurer update, please.
Yep, hang on. Let me just get, whoops, that was the wrong document. Let me just get it up. Sorry. I apologize. My computer decided it had to restart before this meeting, so I
can bring it up if you'd like, Ellie.
I don't think you have it, Steve, because I didn't send it out.
Oh.
Here we go. And the reason I didn't send it out is so Cy is enjoying a much needed vacation right now, and there is a discrepancy between some of the numbers aren't adding up the way that I think they should. And what I mean specifically here is that the cash on hand numbers for the pre-construction and construction, they are both lower than what I think they should be given May's dashboard and the amount we reported in our ledgers. And we just haven't had a chance to work through that. So this may be reality, or this may be a pessimistic scenario of how much cash we have left in these allocations. So I want to get that right with Cy before I distribute it to everyone. So I want to explain why it hasn't been distributed yet and just caveat that, because I don't want to say these are the numbers knowing that we have an open question as to whether or not these numbers are 100% accurate. So this is the grants and cash dashboard. So trying to think of what Cy usually says. So this shows the cash on hand, caveats aside. This number is looking a little bit low. It may be higher, but what you shouldn't be thinking here is, oh my goodness, we're going to run out of money in the construction fund, because as you can see here, there's still a balance of about 1.7 million that's available to us, of which 700,000, give or take, has already been invoiced to the Vermont Community Broadband Board, and we are waiting on the final sign-off of our phase 1 network inspection, which has been started, and hopefully the firm that's doing that will be able to turn that around in a timely manner. They promised it'll be done by the end of July, and then that 700,000 will be replenished in our coffers. So obviously, if we need to pay more than $200,000 of bills in the next month, then we have other cash we will essentially borrow it from, and then we'll claim that back against the grant. So, and I should also say we were in a similar situation with pre-construction, where due to delays in reimbursement, we actually went below zero earlier this year, just in terms of, because it's not like we're running out of money. We just need to make sure that over time we don't spend more money than what we have. So the other thing I want to point out here is the BEAD subrecipient capacity grant. Last month we reported $100,000 as the total award, because the Broadband Board had approved another $69,800, but we hadn't received the paperwork yet. So that paperwork came through in June. We've signed it. So the total award is $169,800. And this is an accurate reflection of the cash received, although we'll be receiving more cash shortly this month. So this number will be going up, and we've only spent a little bit, but we have more money to spend. So does anyone have any questions on where we're standing cash-wise? All right. So moving on to the budget to actual. So again, this is a little bit small, but if I make it too big, then we will lose information. So again, when I send this out, you'll be able to see I'm keeping to the cadence of reviewing the projection every month to either change it or not change it. I only made I only made one small change this month, which is this one here. A very small change to the office supplies that I forgot the cost of our post office box. So I changed that from, I think it was 500. I made it 750 for the year. But other than that, the projections are all pretty much on target. So this shows where we are in terms of year-to-date spending, June. Actually, this is income, but in terms of year-to-date totals, June totals, and the balance of budget. So since you haven't had a chance to review this ahead of time, are there any I can scroll down here to the operating expenses and can give you guys a few minutes to look at things, but I think the highlight here is that we are we are spending according to plan, or if anything a little bit under plan for the most part in terms of operating expenses, and the projections that we did review last month and that you guys have all had distributed in terms of the total end of year spend are all essentially, I think, my most accurate estimate of where we'll be at the end of year.
Ellie, what's your thinking on? I'm assuming we're once we get this squared up with Cy. I assume Cy's coming back. She'll be back on Monday.
I'm not sure when she's back. I have another mail asking her when she's back.
Yeah, I guess the question is, we want to make sure that our governing board has visibility to this to the degree that they actually have the spreadsheet. And I'm wondering if you can give an estimate on when you'll be distributing it, especially in light of the fact that we won't have a meeting next month.
Well, I would say it'll be before we meet the next time. I'm not entirely sure. She was completely offline for a little while. Apparently, where she's staying has worse internet than usual, and she's just unable to download any files. So, okay. I couldn't rightly tell you, Steve. I think that she just got there, and I think usually she's there for about 10 days or 2 weeks. So, worst case, it may not be until the end of this month, but she's aware that there's a discrepancy and is working on it. So I imagine it'll be faster than that, but probably the next 2 weeks.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, but yes, this one I think is all accurate. And then this is the operations dashboard. So you can see here down at the bottom. I'll make it bigger again, but this is where I keep the running total of what went live when. And again, you can match these up if you go to the website and you hover over that map. It'll show you the names of the zones, so you can see what went live when. So we had a lot of them. Oops. I didn't put them on here. They're on my other one anyway. Here it is. Here it is. Fix that. Now they're there. Version control issues. Okay, so yeah. So in terms of where we are, our total revenue for the year is about $14,000 above our May plan. So this is invoiced revenue. It's not collected revenue. Again, just there's a difference between the two tabs. So this is how much was invoiced. 161,000 for the year. So we're also ahead of our plan in terms of mileage with service. We're sitting at 207 miles right now. The plan had 199, and so we have accordingly. That is also not the right number of passings. There we go. So we're sitting at 173 passings more than what we'd planned. And we had 53 new installations in this month, 330 active subscribers as of the end of June. And both of those are about 14 and 15 above plan. And our average revenue per user is nearly $2 higher than our business plan, which is also good news. As we talked about last month, this is a reflection of, I don't know what was going on with this version. This is where we are actually compared to our business plan. So we're seeing 10.5% are not choosing the lowest package. 10.5% more than expected are choosing the mid tier or the high end package. So that's all good in terms of the impact on our average revenue per user. So our take rate is a little bit higher than what our business plan projected. It's 11.5% versus 11.2%. And again, we have been turning up so many areas that this number, as we catch up with installations and work on getting more people connected in areas where we have active service, this number should tick higher. But that's actually really not bad if you consider that it was under a year ago that we launched most of the areas in service. Because remember, at this time last year, we had 304 locations, 304 passings had active service. And we're now up at nearly 10 times that, and we're still sitting at a 10% take rate. So considering the newness of the network, this is actually very encouraging. So a big negative difference month to month is we're sitting at 30 delinquent accounts, whereas we were at 14 the month before. And the month before that, if memory served, we also had 14. But I think so anecdotally, when we take on a new large number of subscribers, I've seen the delinquent accounts jump up because the first bill is a large bill. It includes the installation. It often includes the pro rata period for the month of installation, and that includes the entirety of the next month. And so some people may struggle to pay that first bill on time, and also people are getting used to the new billing system and receiving invoices and so on. So the important number here, which is also shows a negative increase here, is the total number of disconnections. So last month we had three permanent disconnections, and now we have 8. And sometimes these disconnections, they come back because when people get disconnected, they realize that we're serious and they actually wind up paying and getting back online. But obviously that's a number that we want to be checking, because it's not great when people sign up for the service and then don't continue. I mean, it's obviously not great for our take rate, but it's also not great for our financials, because we need to have those customers for several years before we make up the cost of the drop. So something to be looking at just as a business metric. But again, it's really, we are under a year old in terms of actually having a somewhat decent sized network. And so tracking these things, I mean, we really are in the early stages of understanding what these numbers could be, should be, and how to optimize them.
Great. Any questions of Ellie about this? Any of these items?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go for it.
So do you track the reasons for disconnections? I mean, it's not a big deal, but I'm just curious going forward if there's, satisfaction issues versus billing versus whatever.
That's actually a good question. I just see on the list that they get disconnected, but I'm sure that information is available. Many of them, I believe it's for billing reasons that they're delinquent accounts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to know, why they dropped it, and it doesn't have to be a lot of categories, but a couple, 2 or 3 categories, 4 categories maybe, and when they drop, you categorize them.
Yeah, Roger, do you happen to know?
So oftentimes when a customer disconnects, it's because of financial reasons, and we do not proactively call them, just from the standpoint of it can be intrusive to those, and it can put them on the spot, and it can be embarrassing. So generally we only really find out when someone will call back, and they'll make a plan to make payments, and we'll put them on a payment plan, and generally they'll admit, hey, they got behind on payments. But otherwise we try not to be proactive in this instance, because of the situations where it can be intrusive to the customer.
Roger, could you potentially do an email that wouldn't be as intrusive? I mean, it's a small thing, right? So if the answer is no, I'm really not out to make more work for you, although it may look like I am. So email?
It's a possibility. We may not get answers though. So that's one of the ones where we could try though.
Yeah. But Roger, do you know if we track customer disconnections for non-payment versus customer just called up to cancel? Because sometimes the customers could call to cancel if they know they're struggling financially, but usually if someone just says, hey, I don't want your service anymore, I mean, do we differentiate between Maple Broadband implemented disconnections and customer requested disconnections?
Yeah, we do know when a customer does disconnect, and it's because of the customer's choice of non-payment, and that's just something we'll have to go look up all the disconnections for you, and I can get that broken out.
Yeah, so maybe that's something we can do going forward, is we can list customer initiated disconnections versus non-payment disconnections, just so we can see the difference. And by the way, sometimes you can have a customer request a disconnection that's because someone's a seasonal customer, and so just because there's a disconnection doesn't necessarily mean it's permanent. And I see Justin's got his hand up too.
Justin.
Just since the number is so small, and I believe we can subsidize the cost, correct me if I'm wrong, Ellie, or anyone else, and if so, that might be a great thing for the marketing or intern or somebody to reach out to those 8 people and see if we can support them. I don't know. Not trying to add, but it seems like a good opportunity there.
Yep. Well, we have an item for affordability a bit later on the agenda. I mean, it is a good point. I think the thing with any sort of subsidy program, like the one that we were participating in until the money ran out, the federal one, is that in order to be fair and equitable, you need to make sure that everyone is treated consistently, which means that you need to have a clear set of rules for who gets a subsidy and who doesn't, and how you verify eligibility for the subsidy. And when the federal Affordable Connectivity Program went away, also away went the ability to verify information, as well as the rules that went along with that. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that we might create our own way of verifying. But for us right now and for WCBT, like we don't have a way to verify people's eligibility at the moment. So this is one of the things that Maple Broadband and the Vermont CUD Association are trying to work to see because if there was a way to verify people, then we could, exactly as you say, we could decide to extend our existing subsidies to those people. So it's a multi-pronged kind of a thing, and one of the prongs is the ability to verify people.
Thanks for sharing that, Ellie. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I'd love to hear more, so I'll shoot you an email, and maybe we can connect on that, because maybe I might have some ideas or something.
That sounds great. We can use all the good brains that we can get, because the working groups in Vacuda are based on people who have the time and energy to put in the thought into how these things ought to work. And so one of the things, I mean, again, we do have an agenda item on this later, but one of the things that we're actually starting to do now is working with the Vermont Broadband Board and trying to come up with an action plan around this. And one of the things on our wish list is, can we use the power of the state to help us with this, right? Because there are entities in state government that have information that could turn this from a you must qualify yourself to, for example, if your last year's income tax return was below a certain level, you're automatically pre-qualified. So that would be a dream to be able to get, but it's the sort of thing where, as Maple Broadband, we couldn't do that, but working with the Vermont Community Broadband Board, it could be possible. So we want to be thinking creatively about how to do this in such a way that it makes it as easy a burden on our operating partner and also on the customer. I'm going to stop sharing my dashboard now. I think we're done with that.
Yeah, my recollection was that ACP, Affordable Connectivity Program, was burdensome for people who wanted to apply, and there have been efforts made here in the state to help applicants with the steps that they need to go through to apply for ACP, which all are basically a means test. Make sure that people aren't getting reduced cost service if they don't really deserve it. So I think, to Ellie's point, it's we want to support that, but it needs to be done in a thoughtful way to make sure that we're not, putting money into something that's not well thought through.
Yep.
And that is one thing that the state has had a lifeline program for voice services, and it's carried over to the broadband services. And that goes to the incumbent telcos that are out there. But the way the rules are written now, Maple Broadband would have to commit to being an eligible telecommunications carrier and come under some various other state regulations that they just may not want to at this point in time. So really going forward, there needs to be some discussion amongst the state, though, of can there be a plan that doesn't make the CUDs have to jump through as many hoops to actually get the subsidies or the funding to help those stay connected.
Yep.
Any other questions on this? Okay, Ellie, let's move on to audit treasurer update.
Okay, so as you know, our treasurer is on vacation, and we still haven't identified a new treasurer candidate. So there were a couple of candidates that Cy was meeting with, and both declined. She had a couple of other names, and one of them declined, but passed along the name of someone else that Cy was going to meet with. And I'm not sure if she did that before she left on vacation yet. And then there's one other person. But I think the request still remains that if anyone knows anyone that's a retired CPA that might be interested, or that's just has good financial chops that might be interested in stepping up as Maple Broadband's treasurer, there is a budgeted stipend that's available, and we could really use someone.
And according to Cy's estimate, with a lot of the streamlining that Ellie has done with our financial program, Cy had estimated it's about 10 to 12 hours a month worth of commitment. So it's not 40 hours a week or anything like that. It seems reasonable. Audit, Ellie?
I don't have an update on where we are with the audit. I know that Darlene was working on the asset capitalization, but I don't have an update right now.
Okay. We need to get that wrapped up by the end of the year, correct? That needs to be approved by the governing board?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. We do have some time.
Yeah, we do have some time. I mean, we're working on it. I mean, more importantly, we need that to be in place in order to get the funding that we need. So it's obviously a priority, but it's also summer holiday season right now.
Yep. Okay. Any questions on the financial matters before we move on?
Oh, and I lied, actually. We didn't have affordability in the agenda. I must have been thinking about the executive committee.
Okay. Okay. VCBB, Vacuda, BEAD updates, Ellie.
Okay, so I'll start with VCBB. So the matter of most interest to us was mentioned last month that the Vermont Community Broadband Board, there's a $30 million allocation for the Vermont legislature to be used for broadband providers such as ourselves as match for federal programs. So that was allocated it was originally allocated last year, and some money was taken away for flood relief. That was restored and appropriated this year. And so last month in June, the Vermont Broadband Board decided that they were going to award that to providers that were eligible providers under Act 71. So again, meaning us, and they would divide it up in some sort of a fair pro rata allocation. And that status has not changed. So of that 30 million, some of it will be coming to us. So we submitted a letter stating our interest and stating that we would plan to use it for match in the BEAD program. And after yesterday's Vermont Community Broadband Board meeting, there was a very long executive session, and they came out of it having taken no action, because what the board needs to approve is they need to approve the allocation methodology. So what they said was there's going to be another special meeting later in July, and hopefully we'll be able to get clarity on that, because fundamentally, what we and everyone else needs is we need to understand, of that $30 million, what is going to be our allocation, so that we can take that into account in our budget planning, so that we know how to prepare our BEAD bid and how much we still need to get funding for. So that's what I have for VCBB updates. Did I miss anything, Steve? I don't think so. There was a long talk about affordability, but it wasn't really substantive. And just in terms of the board discussion. And then the other affordability updates I gave earlier, where staff approached the Vermont Communications Union District Association, Vacuda, and said, hey, you guys have been saying for a while you want to partner on affordability and doing what we can without involving the legislature. So let's figure out that action plan. So we're starting to set up some meetings to talk about, again, what can be done, both in the short term and then also as preparation for next year's legislative session. Roger, you came back on.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll add that if people want to read the minutes from, or the actual packet from the last VCBB board meeting, there is quite a good discussion as to what other states have tried to do in terms of affordability, or what others are doing out there.
Yeah, there is, but I think one of the challenges with that, which Vacuda pointed out in public comment, is that these other states are not Vermont. And in particular, there's other states, their broadband strategy has been line extensions with incumbent providers that have deeper pockets, versus Vermont, which is funding CEDs like us to build to difficult, challenging rural areas. And so what works in one other state, you can't just copy paste because the context is different. But it does give ideas for different models.
And you did hit that on the nose.
Yep. Okay, and so next up is Vacuda updates, and so the main thing that Vacuda is working on, other than this, trying to figure out what our affordability plan is getting ready for the BEAD program. So we've identified a couple of areas where it may make sense to have Vacuda get involved, because there will be areas of overlap between CEDs in terms of understanding some of the less interesting and more technical parts of the requirements. like the Buy America BABA. So Build America, Buy America requirements and waivers for existing equipment we may have, as well as other things having to do with environmental permitting and historic preservation permitting and cybersecurity and things like that. These are all, I mean, I don't want to say that they're not important items. They're certainly important items, but they're not really in our core competency. So it makes sense, if there's a shared need across CUDs. This is exactly what Fukuda is for, to be able to bring in consultants to help us identify, okay, well, what do we really need to do, and then help us do it or validate and review what we come up with to ensure that it's actually going to meet the program requirements and we won't be rejected on some technicality. So that's been a lot of our focus in the last weeks. And then BEAD update. So before the meeting started, we were talking a little bit about this. So where we are now is that we are the Vermont Community Broadband Board has released the list of what they've submitted to the NTIA as the addresses that are going to be requiring service under the BEAD program. But they didn't release a list of addresses. They released a list of fabric IDs, which needs to be matched up with something else so that we can translate those into addresses. And so I think we're very close to be able to get that in a format that we can start to put it into the Google Earth and then go through a process to get some estimates for how much that's going to cost and select an engineering firm to work with us on the detailed design to get to those final addresses. So other than that, there was an update yesterday in the VCBB meeting, which talked about the projected timeline, and it's what it's looking at right now is September, October is what they're thinking that the full application window is going to be opening. So there'll be a pre-application window earlier than that, in which all we really have to do is say, yes, we're interested. But the caveat to all these timelines is that everything starts when the NTIA approves Vermont's Volume 2, which is the program rules and the scoring rubric and all of that. And there's no telling when that'll happen. So Vermont has submitted it months ago. They've been through multiple rounds of curing. They haven't heard anything in a while. So it's presumably sitting in a queue somewhere at the NTIA waiting for signature or to be passed back. We don't know, but really, honestly, any sort of timeline around BEAD is meaningless until that document is approved. When that document is approved, then we can actually start to trust the timelines and work backwards into what needs to be done when. So we are using the subrecipient grants. We are starting to work on some of the bits around legal and accounting, but it's also very difficult because we can do some parts, but until we see those final program rules, we can't do other parts, and we also don't want to be inefficient. So having that Volume 2 approved will unlock a lot of activity in Maple Broadband and also VCBB in terms of actually moving forward with getting things ready to go to submit our application for the BEAD program. And at Waitsfield as well. I mean, as we all know, we're as I said earlier, we're planning to co-bid that with Waitsfield, and putting together an application means not only that we have to have our information ready, but they have to have their information ready, and we need to merge the two to have a joint response, which is accurate and correct and reflects things that we're going to be able to commit to do.
I should add that it is not a given that we're going to be awarded money from the BEAD program. This is, but from my perspective, watching the work that Ellie has done, and she's done a yeoman's amount of work to prepare for this at both a low and high level. And, but ultimately it's a bid, and we submit a bid, and if somebody else gets awarded, we may not get any money. So we should, we have had some discussions in the executive committee about, Plan B. And I think we do have a high level Plan B on that, but I think I'm pretty optimistic about prospects for BEAD, as I know Ellie is as well. So we'll hopefully have much more promising information for you. But the way it's going, Ellie, it seems like when an award happens, it's not going to happen until next year, beginning of next year, maybe. Yep. So,
yeah, I would say late January at the absolute earliest.
So, and we've been talking about it at the governing board meeting for a year, I think. So, yeah,
I know. I was rereading some very old VCBB minutes from 2022, And I remember, I think there was people from the board were saying, yes, well, the money will be flowing in early 2023. And I was like, sorry, early 2024. And I was like, yeah, not so much.
Nope.
Federal programs take time.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions of Ellie? Anything else you want to talk about? We're kind of running out of time here. So if we have an opportunity, if there's anything you'd like to bring up, you've got the crew on the call here. Okay. Well, we're going to skip over other business then, and I just kind of want to remind you again, I think our best hope of getting a full stable, we've got 18 of 20 delegates, governing board delegates, and our best chances of getting a delegate for Cornwall and Whiting happens because of intervention on the part of other members of our governing board. So if you know of anyone, or if you know of someone who knows someone who might be suitable for this, there's not necessarily any commitment beyond a monthly, one monthly meeting a month. And there's going to be certainly an opportunity as well for those of you who have been in with us for a while to perhaps volunteer in other parts of what we're doing. But for now, it's not a big commitment in terms of time, and we're a municipality. We're effective because we're transparent, and we're transparent because every one of our member towns, with the exception of 2 right now, have information on what we're doing and can comment and critique anything that we're doing. Our next meeting is on September 10. Again, we're skipping the August meeting. If you have nothing else to discuss, I'll make a motion to adjourn, and I'll entertain a second. We have a second from Janai. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for your time. See you in about 60 days.
Bye all.
So are you going to be out working at Fair